Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second installment of Wednesday Weekly Skillshare, a program all about learning a new life skill or general life hack during your time here at Pacific. My name is Amber Mateer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the graduate assistant of competitive sports and outdoor programming at Pacific Recreation. And I am today's moderator and every Wednesday for Wednesday Weekly Skillshare. This session will be recorded for later posting on our YouTube channel. This is also live via Facebook, so I will check in with our Facebook folks in a minute. If you are a Pacific student, I will also be dropping a link to a little check-in form that I'll be asking you to fill out so that we know who attended, all this good stuff. As a future plug, next week's session is going to be at 1 p.m. featuring Molly Carlson. She's a community member and she'll be going over some gardening tips and tricks. And so at this point, I will be turning the virtual microphone over to our special guest, Chelsea Skinner.
Thank you, Bam. Can you actually enable screen sharing? This should have been something I asked you before I started talking, and that's my bad. So while that's going on, so I'm going to be sharing kind of branding and logo guidelines for marketing yourself. And so this is good for anyone who is starting a business or wants to sell a product online, really creating a brand kind of for yourself. I'm gonna really age myself with how bad I am at technology on this one. There we go. So here we go. We're gonna start with a general breakdown of what I'll be going over. So kind of technical design. Oh, it's going quicker than I want. Kind of technical designs, timelines, the purpose of creating something like this, as well as the creation process, kind of figuring out who you are, so your voice, your priorities, overview for your brand. And then I'm going to go over some resources. So some different things, if you are not going to be the one creating your logo, how to create a logo, different campaign breakdowns, audience breakdowns, and additional tools that will help you. So the first thing I really want to bring up when it comes to marketing is this idea of a marketing calendar. And it is really important when it comes to branding yourself and creating something to create a timeline for it. A lot of people think too big and they want to fill out a full year. And so when it comes to branding, I just want to first and foremost kind of extend that you want to strive for quarterly messages and build content plans for that. And all of those should include your brand, your voice, and your logo, which we'll go over a little bit more on exactly how to decide what that is for you. Order of operations, this is how anyone should start when they're starting a new business or a new campaign. You should really first figure out who you are with your brand strategy, and that's what we'll be talking about today. And then you get into your marketing plan. A lot of times people want to have a big fun idea and just kind of go crazy for it with a marketing plan before really figuring out who they are and what their voice is. After that, you're going to do strategies for each channel, and then you really mark it down in a calendar. The next thing you really want to work on is your message and exactly what your priorities are. So it's always important when creating a logo or a brand, figuring out who you are. So an example I gave is if you have a clothing brand or if you're doing anything like that, like online t-shirts, anything that you want to sell, you really want to figure out what is your important theme. So one of the big themes right now is size inclusivity, and to make sure that whatever your brand is and whatever you're marketing and selling, that you always make sure you match those standards for yourself. Not only with your practices, but also with your design and your graphics. You want to make sure that they are also that same type of feeling of inclusivity, if that is your example theme. So defining success. How do you know it actually worked? How do you know what we're talking about is going to work? Because this kind of stuff hits multiple channels, it's really hard to have a quantitative success on a logo. And so some people, not necessarily creatives, some creatives are just like, yes, it's pretty, it's good. But a lot of times in order to measure success, you want numbers. And so it's important to understand that whatever you are doing, you find out your goals for success ahead of time. And so not every logo is suitable for every audience. Not every logo is suitable for every channel. That's okay. You got to figure out what is meant for you. Say you want to make candles and sell them on Etsy. You're not going to probably make a logo that's for tech gurus and stuff like that. You're going to do something to your audience. You're not going to be selling to little kids, so you don't need like a mascot and bright colors, unless you want to sell candles to little kids, but that's up to you. So once we have all that, you have to prioritize a few themes. And when you get those themes together, that'll help you create your brand messaging. The basic way to do this is coming up with a statement. We want to communicate your message to your audience in a big way. How do we go about this? You should constantly be asking yourself this in the creation process at the beginning so you don't lose your way. Sometimes you get one too many ideas and you try to brainstorm them all at once. It's important to stay on track with what you're doing. So some helpful frames for calendar creations and launch dates for logos. It's important to release them with a purpose. So if you create a logo, you want to make sure you launch it when you're actually launching your company, your brand, whether or not you're starting a photography business, whether or not you're starting graphic design on the side. You want to make sure you don't just go, here's my logo. You want to launch it out with something else. So whether or not you're making a website with some, there's a lot of free online website services. Wix.com is a really good one to use. There's some paid ones that are also really great to use that are a little bit more in depth and might be a little fancier. Squarespace is a really good paid program for online website hosting for shops and stuff like that. You want to make sure when you're announcing that logo and when you're branding and you're announcing your brand, you're also announcing something actual physically, either an event or a website or something like that. You don't just want to be throwing things out randomly. So now into kind of the more fun side of this. I keep skipping ahead. You're really going to want to choose your style. And this first part kind of goes with defining your words and your voice of who you are. So every brand has words that kind of go along with it. It's super easy to find adjectives. I actually, one of the things I have a link to, I wonder if it can share there. It's describingwords.io. And so when you go on to it, what it does, it allows you to type in what your product is and it will pick up adjectives that kind of go with it. That's usually a great online resource and it shows words most commonly used as well as the most unique words used on the website associated with certain brands. So you can really kind of figure out your voice and who you are through that. And it's kind of fun to just kind of create the character that is your brand. Here's some examples of some companies and the brand voice that they use. These are all ones that you will recognize, everything from Coca-Cola, Tiffany, Harley, Jeep, Intel, Disney, and really what they make their logos based on, as well as kind of their company and who they are. Another part about it is actually choosing the design style that matches those words. So the first one I'm going to go over is kind of minimalist. And so if you want your style to be very clean, simple, stylish, technical, futuristic, that's a weird way to say that, futuristic, a lot of people go for minimalist styles. And I did want to share real quick, there is a trend right now actually on TikTok of people doing minimalistic logos out of people's names. So I did want to share that video, which I might have to go into screen sharing options to switch over. Stop, share, bump it down. And so these are actually pretty cool. A lot of people right now are doing, it's like a challenge on TikTok where you turn your name into a logo and they're all basically in the minimalistic style. So as you see, they're just taking letters and writing over them and then going in through programs to make them a little cleaner. And so this kind of style of logo you can do with basically any word, and you want to make sure that the lines are very clean and that you are creating a shape in the end. You'll see the ones that are nicer, they actually bend the letters to fit into certain shapes. And so keeping that in mind if you want to do a logo like this for who you are for branding. These are great for photographers, designers, when you're really branding yourself and selling your own service rather than a product, because you're not necessarily coming up with a name for what you're selling. You are in fact selling yourself. I'm going to exit those. Those are super cute though. You can find them all over TikTok. Share, reshare. There's probably an easier way to go about this, but I'm really not the best at Zoom. So the next kind of style for design I'm going to go over is character designs. These ones are really fun to do. They're very commonly found on like esport logos, a Twitch channel. They're super popular. So if you're a streamer and you want to stream video games and stuff and you really kind of want to brand on that, these bright, colorful, energetic logos are very popular for sports teams. And so a lot of transitions for online sports teams and online representation also follows those. So these ones are always really cool. These ones are harder to create, but there are a lot of online free resources where you can download pre-made animals that you can then customize to your own style. So freepick.com and Vecteasy, which I do have later on in a slide, those are two really great websites for finding these kind of pre-made animals that you can then change to fit your templates, whether you're changing the shield they're on, the color they're on, kind of to make them match your style. Organic is kind of my favorite. It's very smooth. It's like a very smooth designs, usually very bright colors. You use them a lot in like health and wellness designs, earth-friendly things, vegan, organics. A lot of them have these very fine curves, very abstract type of art styles. And it gives off the feeling of community, communication. A lot of that is also found a lot with empathy. If you're trying to feel empathetic as a company, if you're offering wellness coaching or something along those lines, you're trying to sell that kind of business or brand yourself that way, these are really great for those kinds of styles. And now I'm going to go over how each of those designs can be formatted. So this is kind of long and boring, so I won't go into too much detail on all of these. But every logo can be broken down into one of these 7 categories. There's monograms. So those are when you have a really long title for whatever you're doing. You generally want to use initialism, and you'll take an initial of whatever your title is. So HBO, IBM, they use those, and then they use their letters and make them look fun. Word marks is where you use the full name. And if you have a really cool name of something that is super unique, those are great for word marks. And so it's distinct and very concise. So this is a little bit different than the pictorial marks, because when you think of word mark, you think of like Coca-Cola, how you can just press it onto everything. Well, the next step would be pictorial marks. So it still needs to be distinct, one of a kind, but generally you already want to be an established brand for something like that. So Apple is super easy to understand because it's a physical apple. So that's a good translation, but say Apple doesn't have the same meaning culturally. So for large brands that go across like nations and borders, you can't really use something like that all the time. And so that's when abstract logos come into mind. So like Pepsi has the sphere with 2 different colors on it, where it's more abstract, so that it can be more international. Mascots are always fun. Once again, with sports and characters and stuff like that, it creates like a spokesperson and a theme for what you're doing. And you can kind of really build design off of that. Like if you have a tiger, you can always add stripes, you can add claws, you can add all that fun stuff. Combination marks are where you use 2 different items. So like Burger King, it says Burger King and it has a burger in it. Those are multi-use. Those are super good to use in different areas as well. So with your logos, if you just have a symbol, sometimes they don't read as well on certain objects. If you just have words, sometimes they're harder to put on smaller things. So you really want to keep that in mind when you're creating your logo, where you're actually going to put it, and where it's actually going to go. And since I'm just talking about kind of branding yourself, you're probably going to want to stick to word marks. You can do abstract logo marks, but the simpler is better with a lot of these. So places to find inspiration. I think it's always important, especially if you don't know where you're going, to find examples first and kind of go off of them. So Behance.net is probably my favorite place to look. It has a lot of professional designers, and they do free Adobe Live classes. And so you can go through and learn how to do a lot of these things for free and come up with ideas. Logo Pond is a website where people drop off their logos and ask for a review. So that's always a really cool place to see what other people are doing. Logo Archive is actually an archive of any major brand logo that has been trademarked. So if someone actually owns it, it's in there. And then the color wheel, I'm actually going to open this one because I think it's important to always choose the right colors when you're making things. And so Adobe has a free color wheel web page where you can go in and choose a color and it'll give you the complementary colors based off of it. And so you can choose the different types, whether it's monochromatic, triad, complementary, and then you just move these around and it'll show you exactly what colors complement where. If you move in, you do the warmers to the cooler colors and do the whole spectrum. Square, I usually like the square ones because I think it's a little bit more fun. And then I'm a big pastel fan, so I'll always bring those in generally. So that's always fun when you're trying to create something to keep your colors similar and make sure that they're very well put together. So then the last part is I'm actually going to do a little breakdown of some logos I've already made. So that'll give kind of context to what I've talked about. Is it there? I swear I get older every time I use a computer. Okay, we already talked about that bit. So I was given the theme of empowering students. The tagline was powered by UREC. They wanted it to be fun, engaging, and clean. And then the colors were crimson and gray. So I broke it down in 4 different types of styles that originally was presented. Then we came up with this as our finalized approved idea. And then we went with that big middle one. And so we went with the idea of a battery because it was powering up. You can see the typography was all simple. No fancy cursives or anything like that. That went back to that clean design. And then the different uses for it, because it was something to be used on physical objects. It didn't have any shadows. It didn't have any gradients, nothing too wild and crazy. And then it was put on like a t-shirt. So something like that, just to keep in mind. I don't know why it keeps going to the next slide. So here's some online resources that I would recommend. So the first thing is some free classes. So Canva is a great website to use if you want to create anything. It's kind of a beginner's paradise. It has built-in tools and pre-made templates, but it's also important to use their design school. So a lot of times when people get on Canva, they go a little crazy and just have too much fun and put everything on it. But they actually have a blog built in that'll break everything down on how to create stuff. There's also Adobe Live. It's more advanced. You need to have your own programs, but there are professional designers, photographers going through and creating things and reviewing portfolios. So you can follow along pretty well with their challenges. And it's super informative and helpful. Free online content, Free Pick and Vecteezy. I mentioned them a little bit earlier. And so they have free downloads that you can edit directly and kind of go over. Like if you're not sure how to make the tiger, you would go to one of these sites and you can download it and then edit it from there. They have free vectors and stuff, but they do have limited downloads per day. So you can't go and grab everything, but you can subscribe to them. Vecteezy subscription's a little cheaper. And then all Pacific students also have access to ASUOP Design. So if you email asuopdesign@pacific.edu, they actually do free graphic design for students and student departments on campus. And so they can partner with you. And it's usually easier if you go to them and you have these themes in place and you have these ideas to give them that brief. You're more likely to get the logo you want and what you need. So yeah, that's basically what I have. Let me stop sharing. If anyone has any questions, comments, or concerns, I'll be here to answer them.
Thank you, Chelsea, so much. I learned a lot from that presentation. I think the only question that we have in the queue right now is probably one that you've heard a lot, or just, is there a favorite brand that you have that you always look towards for inspiration?
Yeah, so actually, and it might be a cop-out, is the Adobe brand. So Adobe Max, actually, I think is the best one they brand within themselves. So Adobe as itself is the graphic design product for Illustrator, Photoshop, and they create the programs that a lot of the programs I use. As far as one of the events they have is the Max Conference, and every year they update their logo to have something fun with it. And what I mean by update is they have the same logo, it's set in stone, it is MAX, minimalist spelled out, but then they'll do fun creative things to it. So one time they made it out of metal and they put like liquid nitrogen on it and they burn it. And then they had a slow motion animation on top of that. And so they do things like that where they take graphics and real world effects and blend them together for their conference. And they always represent their logo that way. And so that's always really exciting. They also, Adobe does a lot of designers where they'll hire them on for a year to do whatever they want to work on. And one of the big projects they tend to do is presenting and creating the Adobe logo in a creative way. So I'm always a big fan of their branding and their marketing, which might be a cop out because it's a design company, so they're pretty good. IGA is another great one, the American Institute of Graphic Artists. They have a really cool newsletter and they have a really cool logo on theirs. I think they're super consistent. If we want to go main brands, Coca-Cola is a classic. They just know how to do it right. Disney's got great constant marketing, branding. Yeah, those would probably be the big ones that I can think of.
Thank you. Yeah, so that looks like our only question in the queue, so we can stay on for a minute or two. And yeah, just as a reminder for any of the viewers who are watching, if you are a Pacific student, either on Zoom or on Facebook, there is a link to a check-in form. If we're watching this session today with Chelsea, would really appreciate it if you checked in just a simple 99 number and the title of today's session. And then, of course, just going to plug next week again, 1 p.m. We'll be back here on Zoom and on Facebook for another session of Wednesday Weekly Skillshare. So I'll give a couple more moments for any final questions.
I'll plug ASUOP design again.
Yeah.
I can. So ASUOP design is student run. It is under strategic marketing, which is a part of student government. And so they are UOP students who are graphic designers. And so a lot of time graphic design costs a lot of money. So it's super convenient that we have very good designers on staff ready to work and help students create logos and kind of branding and posters and all that fun stuff. So definitely take advantage of them while you can.
Cool. I think with that, we can happily end today's session. So again, thank you, Chelsea, so much. Really appreciate your time and expertise in this topic.